A quiet vengeance. The Viridian Emperor's guards never saw Maya Reyes coming. She moved like a shadow through the crystalline palace corridors, her footsteps silent against the polished obsidian floors. Each breath measured, each movement calculated with military precision. The neural dampener at the base of her skull neutralized the psychic sensors that would normally detect human thought patterns, technology the Viridians had dismissed as primitive when humans first presented it during the diplomatic exchanges 7 years ago. Their arrogance had always been their weakness. Captain Maya Reyes, diplomatic attaché to the Terran Confederacy, had spent 3 years cultivating her cover, 3 years of smiling at beings who viewed her species as barely evolved primates, 3 years of gathering intelligence, building trust, and waiting for an opportunity. She hadn't planned for that opportunity to arrive in the form of genocide. New Terra Colony, population 1.7 million, had been reduced to molten slag yesterday. The official Imperial broadcasts called it regrettable collateral damage from a military exercise. Maya knew better. She had intercepted the direct order from Emperor Thelos himself. A measured response to human expansion, a necessary example. The memory of the transmission feeds from New Terra, children playing in parks one moment, vaporized the next, fueled her now as she approached the Emperor's private chambers. The 2 Krell guards outside the door never registered her presence before the neurotoxin darts found the thin membranes beneath their armored exoskeletons. Maya's gloved hand pressed against the biometric scanner. Another primitive human invention concealed within the glove replicated the Emperor's unique biosignature. The doors slid open with a soft hiss. Emperor Thelos, resplendent in his ceremonial nightwear of iridescent scales, harvested from a now-extinct species, turned from his viewport overlooking the capital city. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of mild surprise, not alarm. He still didn't consider humans a threat. Captain Reyes, he said, his voice a harmonious blend of tones that the universal translator rendered into flat human speech. Protocol dictates appointments even for favored diplomats. Maya removed her neural dampener, letting him feel the full force of her rage and grief. The Emperor's eyes widened as the emotional wave hit him. "You're here about New Terra," he said, understanding dawning. "A regrettable necessity. Your kind multiplies too quickly, spreads too aggressively." The council agreed. The council wasn't informed. Maya interrupted, activating a small holographic projector. It displayed the Emperor's private communication ordering the strike, time-stamped before any council deliberation. "You acted alone. And now you'll answer for it." The Emperor's upper limbs moved toward the concealed alarm panel, but Maya was faster. The stun beton, another primitive human weapon, connected with his thorax, disrupting his neural pathways. He collapsed to the floor, 4 limbs twitching. "You're making a terrible mistake." Thelos gasped as Maya bound his limbs with molecular restraints. "The Empire will burn your homeworld for this." Maya lifted the Emperor's 7-foot frame with the help of her exoskeleton, hidden beneath her diplomatic uniform, and looked into his multifaceted eyes. "That's exactly what I'm counting on," she replied. The Imperial shuttle slipped through the defense grid around Viridia Prime with ease. Maya had spent months collecting the necessary clearance codes, planning for contingencies she hoped would never materialize. Now, with Emperor Thelos sedated in the cargo hold, those preparations proved their worth. Admiral Kenzo's face appeared on the comm screen, his weathered features set in grim determination. "Captain Reyes, confirm status." "Package secured," Maya replied. "Proceeding to rendezvous coordinates." Kenzo nodded. "The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. The Viridian Imperial Fleet is in disarray. Apparently, nobody knows who should give orders with the Emperor, indisposed." "That won't last," Maya said. "The First Minister will assume temporary control. We have perhaps 12 hours before they organize a response." "Then we'll make those hours count," Kenzo said. "Humanity has friends in the Council, Captain. More than the Viridians know." The shuttle accelerated toward the jump point where the TSS Defiant waited in stealth mode. Maya checked the Emperor's vital signs on her wrist display. Stable. He needed to remain alive. A dead Emperor would only create a martyr. In the darkness of space, Maya allowed herself a moment of doubt. The plan had seemed straightforward when Admiral Kenzo first proposed it. Capture the Emperor, present evidence of his crimes to the Galactic Council, force the Empire to acknowledge its atrocities. But now, with the weight of potential interstellar war resting on her shoulders, the magnitude of what she'd done pressed down upon her. New Terra's dead deserved justice, but was she about to condemn billions more to death in pursuing it? The shuttle sensors chimed as it approached the rendezvous point. The Defiant decloaked, its sleek hull absorbing rather than reflecting the distant starlight. As the docking procedure began, Maya moved to the cargo hold to prepare the Emperor for transfer. Thelis had awakened, his 4 eyes tracking her movements with calculated hatred. "You believe this is justice," he said, his voice eerily calm. "But you're simply continuing the cycle that began long before your species achieved spaceflight." Maya checked the restraints. "Save your philosophical musings for the Council." "The Council?" Thelis laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Do you truly believe they'll side with humans over an empire that has maintained galactic stability for 5,000 years? Your species is barely 2 centuries into space exploration. You are children playing at politics you don't understand." Maya leaned close to the Emperor's face. "That's where you've always misunderstood humans, Your Majesty. We learn fast." The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system, neutral territory and home to the Galactic Council headquarters. A dozen Imperial warships immediately locked weapons on the human vessel. On the bridge, Admiral Kenzo stood impassive as Communications Officer Lieutenant Park announced. "They're demanding we surrender the Emperor and prepare to be boarded." "Open a channel," Kenzo ordered. "All frequencies, including the Council's emergency band." Park nodded. "Channel open, sir." "This is Admiral Hiroshi Kenzo of the Terran Confederacy. We have Emperor Thelis aboard and evidence of unsanctioned genocide against civilian populations. We invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, the right to present evidence of crimes against sentient life directly to the full Council." The view screen flickered, revealing the severe features of First Minister Vex. Her silver scales gleamed under the light of the Imperial flagship's bridge. "Release our Emperor immediately," she hissed. "Any invocation of Council procedure must be done through proper channels, not by criminals who have committed the highest form of treason against the Empire." "The evidence will be presented," Kenzo replied calmly. "As per Article 7, we request safe passage to the Council chambers." "Your request is denied," Vex said. "Return the Emperor or be destroyed." A new voice cut through the transmission. "The request is granted." The view screen split to reveal the ancient face of Council Elder Muktarin. The Arcturian's tentacled visage showed no emotion, but the authority in his voice was unmistakable. "First Minister, Article 7 supersedes Imperial authority. The humans have the right to present their case. All parties will proceed to Council headquarters. Any aggressive action will be met with the full defensive capabilities of Arcturus Station." Vex's scales darkened with rage, but she nodded stiffly. "As the Council wills." The transmission ended, and a tense silence filled the Defiant's bridge. "That bought us time," Kenzo said, "but not much. Vex won't risk attacking us under Council protection, but there are other ways to silence accusations." Maya nodded. "I'll prepare the Emperor for transfer to the Council station." As she turned to leave, Kenzo added, "Captain Rice, whatever happens in that Council chamber will change the galaxy. Are you prepared for that?" Maya thought of New Terra, a family's vaporized mid-breakfast, of the casual cruelty with which Emperor Thelis had ordered their deaths. "Change is long overdue, Admiral." Council Station hung in space like a massive crystalline snowflake, its translucent structures housing representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations. At its center lay the Grand Chamber, an acoustic marvel designed to allow every species' form of communication to be heard clearly. Maya stood at the entrance, Emperor Thelis beside her in restraints. Behind them waited Admiral Kenzo and a small security team. Before them stretched a pathway to the central podium, lined on all sides by council representatives arranged in concentric rings according to their civilization's seniority in galactic affairs. The humans' position, as one of the newest members, was in the outermost ring. The Viridian Empire occupied a place of honor in the innermost circle, their long history of galactic influence ensuring their privileged position. First Minister Vex waited at the Viridian delegation's platform, her posture radiating contained fury. Surrounding her were representatives from the Empire's closest allies, species that had prospered under Viridian patronage. Elder Moktaran's voice resonated through the chamber. The Council recognizes Captain Maya Rise of Earth, invoking Article 7 of the Charter. Present your evidence, Captain. Maya activated the neural link to her implant, and the chamber's massive holographic array came to life. Above the central podium appeared the image of Nuterra, a thriving colony one moment, then enveloped in destructive energy the next. The recording continued, showing the aftermath. A molten wasteland where a vibrant human settlement had stood. Yesterday, Maya began, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Emperor Thelis ordered this attack without council approval, without declaration of war, without warning to civilians. She transmitted the next file, the Emperor's direct order, his biometric signatures verifying its authenticity. Murmurs spread through the chamber as the evidence unfolded. Maya continued, presenting not just the destruction of Nuterra, but a pattern. 7 other incidents over the past decade, affecting not only human colonies but settlements of other problematic species that had challenged Viridian authority. First Minister Vex surged to her feet. This is manipulation. Selective evidence presented without context. These incidents were responses to direct threats against imperial security. Were children in schools a threat to imperial security? Maya asked, projecting images of a Novan educational facility destroyed 3 years earlier. The Novans, insectoid beings known for their mathematical brilliance, had refused to share certain algorithmic discoveries with the Empire. Their punishment had been similar to Nuterra's. From the Novan delegation came a sound like rustling leaves, their expression of grief. These actions were sanctioned by imperial security protocols, Vex insisted. Then perhaps those protocols should be examined. Came a voice from the Centaurian delegation, historically neutral in galactic politics. Emperor Thelis, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke. I have maintained peace across 20 sectors for over 50 years of my reign. Occasional firm responses to insurrection are necessary for stability. Is this your definition of peace, Emperor? Maya asked, projecting new evidence, internal imperial communications outlining systematic suppression of technological development among lesser species, humans included. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations as delegates absorbed the implications. Maya had expected resistance, denials, even threats. What she hadn't anticipated was the quiet approach of an Altarian delegate, a species long thought to be among the Empire's most loyal subjects. We have additional evidence to support these claims, the Altarian said, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing with determination. One by one, representatives from a dozen different species stepped forward, each adding their own documentation to Maya's presentation. A tapestry of imperial abuses spanning centuries began to take shape in the holographic display above the chamber. First Minister Vex's scales had turned almost black with rage. This is conspiracy. Treason. This is truth, replied the Altarian. Too long suppressed. Maya watched as the carefully constructed narrative of benevolent imperial guidance crumbled under the weight of collective testimony. What she had begun as justice for Nuterra had become something much larger, a reckoning centuries in the making. Emperor Thelis stood rigid in his restraints, his 4 eyes darting between the delegates who had once cowered before him. For the first time, Maya saw something new in those alien eyes. Fear. The trial of stars. The council chamber had transformed from a formal diplomatic venue into something resembling a tribunal. Emperor Thelos now stood at the center podium without restraints, a concession to imperial dignity that Maya had reluctantly agreed to. 24 hours had passed since the initial presentation of evidence, and in that time, the political landscape of the galaxy had shifted dramatically. Elder Moktaran's resonant voice brought the chamber to order. We reconvene this extraordinary session of the Galactic Council. The evidence presented against Emperor Thelos and the Viridian Empire is substantial and troubling. The Elder's tentacles rippled in what those familiar with Arcturian expressions recognize as profound concern. Before we proceed, the Council acknowledges a formal request from the Viridian delegation for dismissal of these proceedings on grounds of sovereignty violation. First Minister Vex rose from her seat. The Empire maintains that the capture of our sovereign ruler was an act of war. Captain Raius should be surrendered to imperial justice, and Emperor Thelos returned to Viridia Prime immediately. Maya remained expressionless, though her pulse quickened. This legal maneuver had been anticipated. Admiral Kenzo had warned that the Empire would attempt to frame this as a diplomatic incident rather than face the accusations directly. Elder Moktaran's enormous eyes blinked slowly. The Council has reviewed this request and finds it contrary to Charter provisions. Article 7 exists precisely to address situations where standard diplomatic channels may be compromised by the nature of the accusations. A subtle vibration passed through Maya's wrist communicator. Admiral Kenzo signaling from the Defiant that Imperial fleet movements had been detected near the Terra system. The Emperor's loyalists were positioning for retaliation regardless of the Council's proceedings. The Council recognizes Captain Maya Raius, Moktaran announced. Maya stepped forward, aware of the gravity of what she was about to propose. Honored delegates, the evidence before you demonstrates not isolated incidents, but a pattern of behavior spanning centuries. The human colonies are only the most recent victims of imperial policy. She activated a new holographic display, a timeline of galactic development showing how species that challenged Viridian technological superiority systematically suffered accidents or natural disasters that set their development back generations. We do not seek vengeance, Maya continued. We seek reform. The Empire has maintained stability, yes, but at what cost? Progress suppressed, species subjugated, potential squandered. Emperor Thelos raised his upper limbs, the traditional Viridian gesture requesting attention. The chamber fell silent. For 5 millennia, he began, his harmonious voice carrying effortlessly through the space. The Viridian Empire has been the foundation upon which galactic civilization rests. We brought order to chaos, unified warring species, and established the very protocols this council operates under. His 4 eyes swept across the assembled delegates. Yes, we have made difficult decisions. Yes, we have acted with authority when necessary. The burden of maintaining peace across thousands of worlds sometimes requires firm action against destabilizing elements. Maya watched as several delegates nodded in agreement. The Emperor's charisma and the weight of history made his arguments compelling, even in the face of damning evidence. Captain Rice speaks of reform, Thelos continued, but what she proposes is dissolution, the unraveling of structures that have preserved interstellar harmony for longer than humans have had written language. Is that what this council truly desires? Chaos. The chamber remained silent as the Emperor's words settled over the delegates. Then, from the middle ring, the representative of the Doreshi collective stood. The avian species had historically maintained neutrality in galactic politics. We have reviewed the evidence with great care, the Doreshi representative said, her feathered crest rising with emotion. And we find ourselves asking not whether the Empire maintains stability, but at what point stability became stagnation. At what point protection became suppression. She projected her own data, scientific advancement rates across the galaxy, showing clear plateaus coinciding with imperial interventions. The Doreshi propose a third path, neither vengeance nor continuation of the status quo, but transformation. The Empire's infrastructure and experience are valuable, but its leadership and methods require fundamental change. Murmurs of consideration spread through the chamber. The Dorishi were respected for their rational approach to governance, their proposals typically well considered. First Minister Vex hissed in disapproval. Transformation imposed by outside forces is conquest by another name. Perhaps, interjected the Altarian delegate who had first supported Maya's evidence, transformation should come from within. There are many in the Empire who have long sought reform. Maya sensed an opening and stepped forward again. What if Emperor Thelos voluntarily submitted to a truth commission? Not a trial, but a comprehensive accounting of imperial policy, with the goal of reform rather than punishment. Emperor Thelos laughed, the crystalline sound echoing around the chamber. You suggest I willingly dismantle my own legacy. Voluntarily submit to humiliation. I suggest you choose evolution over extinction. Maya replied quietly. Before Thelos could respond, a commotion erupted at the chamber entrance. A group of Viridian military officers pushed their way in, led by an imposing figure Maya recognized immediately, General Krav, commander of the Imperial fleet and Thelos' most loyal enforcer. Forgive the interruption, Krav announced, his scales shimmering with barely contained aggression. But this charade has gone on long enough. Elder Moktarin rose to his full height, towering over the chamber. General Krav, you have no authority to disrupt council proceedings. I come with authority of the Imperial Security Council, Krav replied, projecting a formal declaration. Emperor Thelos has been deemed compromised, potentially subject to human neural manipulation. I am authorized to return him to Viridia Prime for medical evaluation and to assume temporary command of Imperial forces. Maya's mind raced. This was an unexpected development, a coup disguised as a rescue. Admiral Kenzo had warned that hardliners within the Empire might take drastic action if Thelos appeared weak. Emperor Thelos' reaction confirmed Maya's suspicion. His scales paled, and his posture changed subtly. Not indignation at the accusation, but fear of Krav himself. This is an internal imperial matter, Krav continued, and under Chapter 3 of the Charter, takes precedence over these proceedings. Maya exchanged glances with Admiral Kenzo, who had moved closer to the central podium. They hadn't planned for this specific scenario, but the tension between Thelos and his general presented an unexpected opportunity. General, Maya said, stepping forward, if you're concerned about neural manipulation, I invite council medical experts to examine both Emperor Thelos and myself. Human technology is primitive by imperial standards after all. Surely such manipulation would be easily detected. The suggestion placed Krav in a difficult position. Refusing would undermine his stated reason for interrupting the proceedings. Elder Moktarin seized the opening. A reasonable proposal. Council medical protocols are universally accepted as unbiased. General Krav's scales darkened, a sign of frustration. The Emperor will return with us now. Imperial security is not subject to council deliberation. Actually, came a new voice. It is. The chamber turned toward the sound. Minister Loreth, the Empire's own representative to the council's legal division, had risen from his seat. General Krav, Loreth continued, his aged voice carrying surprising strength. Your actions violate no fewer than 7 imperial protocols regarding chain of command. The Security Council cannot remove an emperor without consent of the regional governors, which has not been secured. Maya watched in fascination as cracks in the imperial power structure became visible to the entire galaxy. Loreth had been part of the Viridian delegation for decades, always a quiet procedural presence. His direct challenge to Krav suggested deeper divisions within the Empire than humans had realized. Minister Loreth speaks truly, agreed another Viridian official from the delegation. General Krav's actions are not sanctioned by imperial law. The chamber watched as the Viridian delegation divided before their eyes, some moving to stand with General Krav, others remaining seated in implicit support of the established order, however flawed. Emperor Thelis straightened, sensing an opportunity to reassert control. General Krav, you will stand down and return to your post. This is a direct imperial command. I answer to the Empire, not to an emperor who would allow human barbarians to dictate terms. Krav replied, his hand moving to his ceremonial weapon. In an instant, Council security forces materialized around the chamber, silent, efficient, their advanced weapons trained on all parties. Elder Moktaran's voice cut through the tension. There will be no violence in this chamber. Council neutrality protocols are now in effect. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds before General Krav lowered his hand. This matter is not concluded, he said, before turning and exiting with his loyalists. As they departed, Maya caught Emperor Thelis watching her with a new expression, one she couldn't quite decipher. Calculation. Respect. Whatever it was, the power dynamic had shifted. He'll make his move within hours, Admiral Kenzo said. Maya, Kenzo, and representatives from 7 species that had suffered under imperial aggression had gathered in a secure council meeting room. The emergency session had recessed for deliberation, giving them a brief window to assess the new development. Krav needs to solidify control before word of the power struggle spreads throughout the Empire. The Altarian delegate agreed, its bioluminescence pulsing in agitated patterns. Our sources indicate he commands loyalty from approximately 60% of the Imperial fleet, which means 40% might not follow him, Maya noted, especially if Thelis remains alive and contests the coup. The Doreshi representative tilted her avian head. You suggest we protect the very emperor we came here to accuse. I suggest we use the division to maximum advantage, Maya replied. The Empire must change. We all agree on that. But a civil war would devastate hundreds of worlds. Admiral Kenzo nodded slowly. Captain Rice is right. As satisfying as it might be to see the Empire tear itself apart, the collateral damage would be unacceptable. What do you propose? Asked the Novan representative, their compound eyes reflecting the room's light in fractured patterns. Maya activated the room's secure display. We offer Emperor Thelis a choice. Meaningful reform in exchange for council support against Krav's faction. He would never agree, the Altarian objected. He might, Maya said, if the alternative is watching his 5,000-year dynasty end in a military coup. Thelis is many things, but above all, he's a pragmatist. And right now, pragmatism points toward compromise. Emperor Thelis sat alone in the council's diplomatic suite, his 4 eyes fixed on the distant stars visible through the viewport. 5 millennia of Viridian rule, and it had come to this. Internal rebellion, external challenges, his authority questioned openly for the first time in his 200-year reign. The door chimed, interrupting his thoughts. Enter, he commanded, his voice lacking its usual resonance. Maya Reyes stepped inside, accompanied not by guards but by Minister Loreth and the Doreshi representative. An unusual delegation, Thelis observed. Unusual times call for unusual alliances, Maya replied. General Krav has left council space and is gathering his fleet near the Cygnus Passage. Intelligence suggests he plans to attack Earth directly, a show of force to solidify his coup. Thelis's scales shifted in a pattern of grim acknowledgement. Krav has always advocated for decisive action regarding humanity. He views your species as the greatest threat to imperial stability in a millennium. Perhaps he's right, Maya said, surprising the Emperor. Not about decisive action, but about humanity representing change. The question now is whether that change must come through destruction or can come through transformation. Minister Loreth stepped forward, his aged scales dulled with wisdom. Majesty, I have served the imperial throne for 170 years. I have witnessed your father's reign and now half of yours. The empire has always adapted to survive. You suggest capitulation? Thelis asked, a dangerous edge to his harmonics. I suggest evolution, Loreth answered. as you yourself mandated in the reforms of the 37th epoch, when you recognized that unchanging systems eventually collapse under their own weight. The Doreshi representative moved closer. The council has drafted a proposal, not punishment, but partnership. A reformed empire with constitutional limits, representation for all member species, and mutual security arrangements. And what of New Terra? Thelas asked, looking directly at Maya. What of your vengeance, Captain Reyes? Justice is not vengeance, Maya replied steadily. The dead cannot be brought back. But their legacy can be a galaxy where such atrocities never happen again, where power is balanced by accountability. Thelas rose from his seat, towering over the delegation. And if I refuse, if I choose to return to my empire and crush Krav's rebellion myself, you would be returned to Imperial space, Maya said. But the evidence presented to the Council would be broadcast across all communication channels in the galaxy. Every being in every system would know the truth about Imperial methods. How long would your authority last then? For a long moment, the Emperor was silent, his alien thought processes unfathomable to Maya. Then, surprisingly, he emitted the Viridian equivalent of a sigh, a subtle harmonic that suggested resignation and recognition. 5,000 years, he said quietly. Perhaps that is long enough for any single vision to guide the stars. The Grand Chamber fell silent as Emperor Thelas approached the central podium, unrestrained and moving with imperial dignity. Maya and Admiral Kenzo stood to one side, representatives of a species that had, in a matter of days, irrevocably altered the course of galactic history. Delegates of the Galactic Council. Thelas began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. Today marks a turning point in our shared journey among the stars. The Emperor activated the holographic display, showing not images of destruction but a new document, the first draft of what would come to be known as the Charter of Mutual Governance. The Viridian Empire has maintained order for 5,000 years, he continued. We have made decisions in service to stability that, viewed from certain perspectives, appear harsh. Perhaps in our dedication to order, we have sometimes forgotten that true stability comes not from force but from consensus. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the chamber. No one had expected such words from Emperor Thelas. Therefore, I propose transformation. The Empire will become a commonwealth. Member worlds will have representation proportional to population. Military authority will be subject to oversight. And, he paused, his scales shifting in what humans would later learn was the Viridian expression of profound change. I will submit myself to a truth commission regarding past imperial actions, including the destruction of New Terra. The chamber erupted in overlapping communications, shock, approval, skepticism all mingling in a cacophony of diplomatic chaos. Elder Moktarin raised his tentacles for silence. This is unexpected, Emperor Thelas. The Council will need time to consider the implications of your proposal. Time is something we may not have, Thelas replied gravely. General Krav gathers forces as we deliberate. He represents those within the Empire who would rather burn the galaxy than see it change. I require Council support to prevent civil war and implement these reforms. Maya stepped forward. Earth stands ready to support peaceful transition. Our fleet is already moving to defensive positions around key hyperspace junctions to prevent Imperial hardliners from launching attacks during this volatile period. One by one, other delegates rose to pledge support. First those who had suffered under Imperial aggression, then neutral parties who recognized the historic opportunity, and finally, surprisingly, many of the Empire's traditional allies, sensing which way the galactic winds were shifting. First Minister Vex, isolated and outmaneuvered, could only watch as the power structure she had served her entire life transformed before her eyes. 1 month later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the Defiant, watching as the newly commissioned Commonwealth peacekeeping fleet conducted joint exercises with Earth vessels. Ships that had once faced each other as potential enemies now moved in coordinated patterns, their crews learning to work together. Admiral Kenzo joined her at the viewport. The latest reports from the Cygnus front indicate Crabbe's forces are in retreat. Without broad Imperial support, his coup attempt is collapsing. Maya nodded. And the Commonwealth reforms? Proceeding faster than anyone expected, Kenzo replied. Turns out many Imperial administrators have been quietly advocating for change for decades. They just needed the opportunity. Maya's gaze drifted to a small memorial she had established in the corner of the observation deck, a holographic projection of New Terra as it had been, vibrant and alive. No victory could bring back those lost, but their sacrifice had catalyzed transformation on a galactic scale. You know, Kenzo said, following her gaze, when you volunteered for this mission, most of us thought it was a suicide run. Capture an emperor, present evidence to a council historically dominated by Imperial interests. The odds were astronomical. Maya smiled faintly. That's another thing the Viridians never understood about humans. We don't care much about odds. Below them, Earth rotated serenely, now officially recognized as a founding member of the Galactic Commonwealth, rather than a tolerated newcomer to the Empire. New ships were already under construction in orbital facilities, vessels that would carry human ingenuity and determination further into the stars than ever before. What happens now? Kenzo asked. With Emperor Thelas, with the Truth Commission. Maya turned from the viewport. History happens. Admiral. Messy, complicated, imperfect, but moving forward. That's the one thing humans have always been good at. We don't stay still. Outside the ship, a Viridian cruiser executed a perfect synchronized maneuver alongside human fighters, former adversaries learning a new dance among the stars. Not peace through subjugation, but cooperation through mutual respect. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that, Maya reflected, was exactly the point.